You're on TV, Shio! Shio, you're on TV!
No comments at this time.
Shio, how do you plead? How would you like to address the allegations?
Is it true? You've been eating extra kibble.
She's pleading the fifth! Oh no, Shio, this isn't America!
Alright, we're back with another vlog. I wanted to update on how my fantasy book is going. I am writing an adult fantasy book if you're new here. The book is nicknamed The Floating House. That is actually not its real title. I do have like a real title for the book, but because when I was developing it, I nicknamed it The Floating House, and that's how a lot of you guys know it, so that's how I'm just gonna keep calling it for now. I have actually made some progress. I have made about 10 to 15,000 words of progress. We are halfway through Act 1. That is, I mean, about 10,000 words in a month or so. I mean, that's kind of average for me in terms of writing speed. It's not particularly fast. It's definitely not as slow as other months. So it was a good writing month, and usually when I am not uploading on YouTube, it means just that I have kind of like retreated into my writing hole and don't want to like break the momentum. But I think I'm just gonna vlog for like the next few days. I'm trying to make it through exposition heavy chapters, introductions to the world, introductions to the magic system. It's always like a bit of a slog for me, especially on a first draft. Usually in a revision I'm having like a lot more fun with exposition, but on a first draft I just really struggle through exposition. But I am very excited to write like the end of this act, and that's kind of what's been like propelling me through the kind of tougher parts of this first act, is that I get to kind of finally write the chapters that I'm very much looking forward to writing in this act, which is the two main characters meeting. They're not meeting for the first time, they do already know each other. So there's a lot of really fun things about this project. I am very excited about it. I mentioned this before, but it is a secondary world adult fantasy. It takes place in a city that is loosely inspired by early 20th century Manila. And yeah, those are the vibes. I did write a newsletter where I kind of gave a lot of dates on the project. That's usually where I give my updates first, over on my Substack. As always, you can subscribe there for free if you're interested. But in that newsletter, I talked about how I'm sort of like finding the groove again with my writing. I have had a pretty tough time starting the draft of this book. I've just been like feeling very up and down about it, but I think I kind of like figured some things out. I think the biggest thing that has changed with The Floating House is that my process has changed a little bit, in the sense that I have kind of abandoned the chapter by chapter outline approach with this book, and that is something that I was using for like the first 3 manuscripts that I wrote. The first 2 books that I wrote were both fantasy. My third book, Local Heavens, was an adult cyberpunk book, a science fiction retelling of The Great Gatsby. Chapter by chapter outlines have worked for me in the past. I've always been like a huge outliner, and last year I did write a chapter by chapter outline for this book, and then I put it on pause. I had to revise Local Heavens. I had like a huge pause, and coming out of that revision with Local Heavens, I tried to take a look at that outline again, and it was helpful. Like, I'm not gonna say it wasn't helpful, but I'm definitely relying less on it. And the moment that I stopped trying to tweak it, the moment that I stopped trying to reference it as I was writing this first act, it's the moment where I started to get more into the draft. So I've just had a lot more fun with not pantsing the project, but definitely embracing the process of discovery writing, just getting to know my characters very organically. I think the marriage that I have found between being an outliner and being a complete pantser is knowing what the main beats of every act is, but not having to worry so much about how do we get from beat to beat, because in a first draft it is okay to not know those things. In terms of like writing advice and the things that you hear all the time, you will hear so many writers talk about how like your first draft, like it's supposed to suck, you know, you're not supposed to know those things, it's supposed to be messy. And I think prior to writing this book, that's always been like a piece of writing advice that I've kept in the back of my head, but I've not necessarily ever allowed myself to participate in. I'm like very obsessive about even my first drafts, but I think the main thing that has changed, having come out of like a pretty extensive revision for the first time with my last book, and just seeing all of the ways that the book constantly would change, and the major differences between draft 1 and the final draft, or the final as if that is what the state that it's currently in. Seeing how much a book is capable of changing, and seeing how, you know, what I was able to accomplish with that project. I think I have a lot more confidence in the sense that have confidence in the revision process. I'm not going to worry too much about producing a clean draft. Very freeing about letting go a little bit of those tendencies with this project. And it has been hard. I think with Local Heavens, because it was a retelling, I think I took for granted how I never really felt my plot was completely lost with Local Heavens, because with a retelling, I was like, you weren't necessarily, from a plotting perspective, a super high level, you weren't necessarily starting from a blank page. When you're not writing a retelling, you are starting from a blank page, and retellings have their own, you know, challenges. I've talked about it before in like previous videos and stuff like that. It's not like writing a retelling is easier by any means. You know, there was this sense that with these characters, like I wasn't starting with anchor points, you know. I think what I've had to learn constantly with drafting this first act of The Floating House is I have to learn how to trust my instincts again as a writer. And it's kind of just, it's very interesting that you can be writing for your entire life and still your process, it never feels like it's set in stone. It's kind of scary, but I'm trying to kind of like embrace it as a fun thing, even though sometimes it doesn't necessarily feel fun. With all that said, there's a lot to look forward to. So I am about 6 chapters into Act 1. I think that Act 1 is gonna be about 10 chapters with 1 potential flashback chapter. I'm gonna say that I'm roughly about 50% of the way through Act 1. This entire act is at least outlined. I definitely, probably, my goal is to have all of Act 1 drafted within the month. It is the start of May. I don't really like to put deadlines on myself, but also now that I feel like I've settled in a lot more with this act, I feel a little bit more comfortable saying I would like to have, fingers crossed, most of the act sorted out by the end of this month. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully by the end of this vlog we can get through 2 or 3 chapters, and maybe at least get to the chapter where the 2 main characters are meeting up for the first time. I have all the dialogue laid out for these scenes already. The scene is like already there. I just need to fill it in. I just need to fill in the prose. I guess you could say that I'm kind of zero drafting, but not entirely, because I'm still writing out the scenes. Usually I really do stop to like polish my sentences as I'm writing, but for some reason with this draft, like I'm really trying to like put aside that perfectionist side of myself and just being like, just write, just get the ideas down, like don't worry about how it sounds yet. Also, let's do a reading update. As always, I'm reading way too many books at the same time. I also have kind of abandoned my Goodreads because I read books and then I just like forget to update them on Goodreads. So this was one of Lynn's recommendations actually. So like I've never read Ninth House, even though it's like been out for so long. Yeah, it's great. The thing about The Floating House is that like it is, there's a case to be made for The Floating House being very dark academia adjacent, but it's not, I'm not gonna classify it as a dark academia. I don't think it's something I feel comfortable using to describe The Floating House, because I think to be considered a dark academia, I do think that a book has to take place significantly at a school. And even though one of my main characters does, at the start of the book, work at an academic institution, there's not that many chapters that are actually going to take place at the school. I think there's one chapter. There may or may not be another chapter. Yeah, she's not a student. She is kind of like, for lack of a better term, I suppose she's faculty. So yeah, there's definitely some commentary to be made in The Floating House about academic institutions, but it's not really the focus of the book. So I would not say that it is a dark academia. My comps for The Floating House at the moment, they've constantly kind of changed around, but I do think right now I feel pretty settled in pitching it as kind of a Jade City x The Witcher x Babel. The reason that I put Babel in there is not necessarily for the dark academia aspect of Babel, but more about some of the themes in The Floating House that have to do with language and kind of relationship between language and colonialism. Yeah, what else have I been reading? I am also, my fun read at the moment is Darker by 4 by June C.L. Tan. Reads like anime if you're super into contemporary fantasy or anime. I have been breezing through it, so hopefully I can finish it soon. And it's very like JJK Bleach vibes. I know that's how June has been like pitching this book, and I do think it's extremely accurate. If you really like the vibes of things like JJK, Bleach, Noragami, that's what it is giving. The book that I'm reading, coincidentally, this is also a recommendation that Lynn gave me a while ago. How to Hide an Empire: History of the Greater United States. The book does talk quite a bit about the US occupation of the Philippines. The Floating House does kind of loosely analogize that point of Philippine history. It has been very interesting. I really liked it. And also my bookmark, Rachel gave me this. She made it for me. I hung out with Rachel recently, and I mean, look at how pretty this is. She literally made this. It's so pretty. Actually, let's do a little Rachel gift haul, because she literally gifted me some of the sweetest gifts ever. So Rachel gave me, the first thing she gave me is this like super old, I guess like book of analysis of The Great Gatsby. When was this even published? And then she also, look at this, she hand bound this book, bound it herself, and she painted the edges of it. So it's kind of like my own personal copy of Gatsby, and it's so sweet. Thank you so much to Rachel.
Hungry? Dinner. Let's eat dinner. You hungry, Shio? Don't play with that. Don't play with that. Shio, come. Kacha. Okay. Yeah, let's pick. You want, chicken? Shio, let's pick. You just want to say hi? Yeah. No, me. This one? Okay. Yay! Let's have dinner. Let's have dinner.
Okay, somehow I just had a really good writing day today. I'm honestly kind of shocked with myself. I don't know why, I just felt super locked in with this chapter. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I had most of the dialogue already like laid out for a few days, so I kind of like already knew what I wanted to achieve with this chapter. But I think in this chapter I'm able to kind of do the first look at what the magic system kind of looks like. The rate that I'm going, I feel like I'm just gonna try to lock in for another hour or so and try to make as much progress as I can in this chapter. Hopefully I can finish it in this like by today, and then for the rest of the week I can start working on the next chapter. Not going to be a super tough chapter, I don't think, but it might get long. This is looking like it's going to be chapter 6 of 10. Hopefully today I'll only have 4 chapters left in act 1. Act 2 is usually when I have to like really figure things out, so I think that's why I want to like not spend too long on this act 1 anymore, because I feel like it has taken me like 2 to 3 months to ramp up in this act, and I don't want to spend way more time on it than I need. Act 2 is usually the part of the book where your characters, the world kind of like opens up a little bit, and your characters are kind of just like, you know, doing their side quests and all that kind of stuff. I do want to get to that as fast as possible, because I do have a lot of ideas for things that I think would, like scenes that I think should be in act 2, and the longer that I put off writing them, the more that I like forget them. So I feel like that's part of why I want to get to it as fast as possible.
Just saying hi to the cat. Hi cat. You're so sleepy.
So another quick writing update. The chapter that I thought that I had finished already, I'm kind of like rewriting a section of it, because just as I was reading through it, I felt like it was missing something. Like the magic system was just missing juice. Like the way that I had set up the scene felt a little weird, so I'm rewriting that right now. The chapter I am editing right now is chapter 6. I want to make significant progress on chapter 7 tomorrow, and then chapter 8 is where the 2 main characters are going to be meeting up for the first time. I think like the next 4 chapters, I really want to like spend this month ironing out those 4 chapters, which means these next 2 chapters that I am writing hopefully this weekend, I want to finish them as fast as possible. And that's me being like very generous with the timeline. Like obviously if I can write faster, and like if it won't take me like 3 months to write act 2, like that's ideal. I'll definitely be aiming for that. Oh my god, writing through a headache is like the worst thing ever. My brain is so not awake right now. But thankfully it's spring, and I was able to, you know, enjoy the outdoor weather this morning. My agent did actually get back to me about the pitch for this book, because I sent it to her. She read it and she was basically like, yeah, just write it. Like it sounds good. So that's great. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but she did like the title of this book, because the title of this book is not called The Floating House. She liked the title, which is good, because I really suck at titles. I usually don't like writing them. I typically don't title my books until I've started writing them like quite a bit. I felt like this book needed a title as fast as possible, just because like I wanted the book to kind of like have an identity as I was writing it, and as I've been like getting through this first act. I'm gonna try to buckle down for the rest of today. Today is Sunday. I have had an okay writing day. I was hoping to get a little bit more done. I made it through, I think, halfway through this chapter, maybe like a little bit more than halfway. The chapter that I was working on yesterday, I think that chapter was harder to write than the chapter that I'm writing today. My female main character, her early chapters have just been harder to write. She has more of like the magic system exposition kind of chapters. The chapter that I'm writing today, it is still exposition, but it is like a different kind of exposition. It's more like world exposition and not necessarily it's like world and politics, I guess. Whereas yesterday's chapter was more like the rules of the magic system. So they're both like challenging in different ways, but I usually find magic system stuff to be harder to write. I think one thing that I am a little bit stressed about is just the fact that the cast of this book is pretty big. If there's anything that I'm like slightly concerned about, it would be deciding which characters are really the characters that I should be conscious of in terms of like resolving their arcs, because I think not all characters necessarily need to have character arcs aside from like your main characters. But if you're thinking about like tertiary characters or a character that just comes up in 1 or 2 scenes, how much of an arc do they need to have? And then at that point, if a character doesn't necessarily have an arc, do they need to be in the story? What purpose do they play? It's all jazz right now.
Say hi, Shio. Hi.
Also, for those of you wondering, Shio is not my cat. She just sometimes comes over and I babysit her for a few weeks, but she actually belongs to my brother and his partner. She doesn't belong to me, but we're besties, right, Shio? Writing update. I actually forgot to update this a few days ago, but I did hit 20,000 words in the floating house, if not yesterday then the day before that, so that was good. And I wrote about 1,000 words yesterday, which was really impressive because I felt like I wasn't having like a very good writing day. So the fact that I was able to still write 1,000 words was like kind of crazy, because typically like 1,000 words is pretty hard for me to hit. So I'm pretty happy with my output. I wasn't able to finish the chapter that I wanted to finish yesterday, but I was able to get through like 90% of it. I just have like one more little part of the scene to write. Right, Shio? She's like making little noises. Yeah, I just have like one more little part of the scene to write, and then we're gonna be done. So it is currently 7:30 p.m. and I had a very busy day of work. Like I didn't finish work. I finished work a little bit late, and then I just had some dinner. And you went down? Yeah, so I wasn't able to write yet today. Okay, Shio wants down. You want to be free? Shio, you can leave. It's okay. Where was I? Yes, so I wasn't able to get through the scene. I wasn't able to finish the chapter that I wanted to finish, but hopefully I can finish it today. I'm just going to try to get as much of it done. And then there's just a few more chapters left in Act 1, so hopefully I can vlog that. Well, we'll see how it goes. I'm not gonna make like any promises about what I won't vlog and what I will vlog. Hopefully we can write this book at a decent pace. That's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hope all your writing projects are going well. I'll see you guys in the next video.